Caves. Whether you love them or hate them, you can't deny that they are an iconic part of the Pikmin franchise, and I thought it would be a fun idea to rank all 14 caves from their debut game Pikmin 2. I will be discussing what I liked and disliked in each cave and showing the highlight sublevel of that cave. If you disagree with my placements on the list, you can leave a comment discussing why you think a cave should have been higher or lower, and make sure to subscribe for high quality Pikmin videos weekly. Starting us off at the bottom of the list, we have the Emergence Cave. Now this cave is the first one that you find in Pikmin 2, so it makes sense why it wouldn't live up to all the other caves in the game. The game designers had to make this cave easier so that first time players could grasp the concept of caves without immediately having to deal with a man at legs and 500 volatile dweevils. The only enemies in this cave are snow bulborbs, which are very easy to deal with. The highlight sublevel for me is sublevel 2, which introduces you to the purple Pikmin. While this cave isn't bad and it does serve its purpose for being a tutorial, it isn't nearly as interesting as any other cave in the game, hence why it's at the bottom of the list. Next up is the White Flower Garden. This is usually the third cave you encounter in the game, and due to it being an early game cave, it is obviously shorter and easier than most of the caves in the game. However, I do feel like this cave could have done a bit more, as it feels rather bland and empty compared to the Hole of Beasts before it. This cave doesn't feature many types of enemies and focuses more on hazards, which makes most of the gameplay just switching to the correct Pikmin type. It also introduces you to the White Pikmin. The highlight floor for me is sublevel 4. I don't know why, but it always felt satisfying to quickly collect the treasures with your newfound White Pikmin. Right, next up we have the Hole of Beasts. This is the second cave in the game, in my opinion is much more fun than the White Flower Garden. While it is short, it is a fun cave that ups the challenge a bit more from the Emergence Cave. There isn't too much to say about this one either, it isn't very difficult, and it does feature more enemies. My highlight floor is sublevel 5, which features the first boss of the game, the Empress Bulblax. I always found it strange how like the first boss in the story mode can instantly wipe out your team and also looks like this. Alright, next up we have the Citadel of Spiders. This is really the last early game cave, and it does have a nice increase in difficulty, which can even catch some advanced players off their toes at times. This makes it much more interesting compared to the previous 5 sublevel caves. I also like how it gives you the option to do the cave straight away when you land in the perplexing pool, or wait until you have yellows to make the cave easier. The only somewhat downside is that despite featuring no poison, it still contains buried treasures that only white Pikmin can get. I still remember this because 5-year-old me was pissed out of my mind when I found this out. Oh.
No crackers, Gromit. We've forgotten the crackers.
This could actually be viewed as a positive though, as it encourages players to always bring whites with them with some memorable but cruel game design. The highlight sublevel for me is sublevel 2. The cramped area makes this a very stressful but fun challenge. Alright, we are finally done with the early game caves, so we can move on to the more interesting late game ones. And at the bottom of the late game caves for me is the Shower Room. The Shower Room is a 7 sublevel cave that features a unique bathroom tile aesthetic. My biggest issue with this cave is that the floors feel very samey, using similar layouts and enemies throughout. This makes the cave somewhat forgettable, but that doesn't mean all of it is forgettable. The first floor with wall poles and boulders falling from the sky sticks out in my mind. And not to mention the highlight sublevel 4, which features this very unique sewer layout along with one of the most well-known treasures in the game.
I got my mouth is all dry from smoking the chronic.
Also, I cannot remember where I heard this from, but apparently the wall poles falling from the sky in sublevel 1 are from you draining the pool in the overworld, which is a very neat detail once you notice it. Alright, next up we have the Bulblax Kingdom. This is one of the first caves you can access after unlocking blue Pikmin, so naturally it features no water hazards at all. This cave introduces traps to the game. Things like bomb rocks will fall from the sky and you have to quickly react to make it out of there with 0 casualties. It also introduces more tougher enemies such as the orange Bulborb, who wakes up much earlier than the regular Bulborbs. The boss of this cave, the Emperor Bulblax, is ironically the easiest thing about it, sad considering it was named after him, though his boss arena does feature a nice puzzle which lifts up what would be a wasted sublevel. Also, the thing about there being no water hazards was a lie. The puzzle at the final sublevel does feature some water, but you aren't meant to use blues for it. The highlight sublevel for me is sublevel 4. It's always a difficult one to nail, but it feels so good to barely make it out of there with no casualties. One last thing to note is that this cave is the best for farming purples in my opinion. It's close to the base and you really only need to get to sublevel 4 to get a large quantity of purple Pikmin. Right, next up we have Glutton's Kitchen. This cave features the iconic bread bugs and has a really memorable aesthetic. All of the floors are meant to resemble a playroom with many notable objects such as plates, toy houses, a train track you can ride on, and a giant marimba that you can also ride on. This really makes the cave stick out in my mind and it makes it much more fun to play through. The bread bugs also add a pseudo time limit to this cave as you usually want to grab the treasures before they are pillaged by the bread bugs. This cave features a good amount of difficulty as well for its positioning in the game, featuring tougher enemies such as bulborbs and cannon larvas. The highlight floor for me is sublevel 6 where you have to wrestle with the giant bread bug for control over the treasures. Or you can just do this. Next up we have the Snagger Hole. If you like the Snaggerts, then you are going to absolutely love this cave as they appear frequently throughout. This cave also has some nice theming where on the first floor you make your way to this birdhouse and then on the next floor you are in the outside area. This makes it look like you jumped out of the birdhouse. A problem with this cave though is unlike the Glutton's Kitchen, they don't stick with the theming, especially with these random metal floors that stick out like a sore thumb. This cave's boss is the Pileated Snagger. Despite being a controversial boss, this has always been one of my favourites in the series. The highlight floor for me in this cave is sublevel 6, which features a challenging micromanagement game of getting through water with blues and dealing with gas pipes with white Pikmin, all the while dealing with Snaggerts that harass you at every opportunity. Just short of the top 5 we have the Terrarian Complex. This cave features a rusty metallic theme and a large variety of enemies, each of them being more dangerous than the last. This cave features careening dirigibugs, cannon beetle larvas, gatling groinks, and my personal favourite, the volatile weevils. Despite the similar theming throughout the cave, it does manage to separate the sublevels with different memorable set pieces and enemy layouts. Not to mention this cave's boss, the Man at Legs, one of the most iconic bosses in the series. Even if I personally find this game to be a bit overrated, he still is a memorable boss. The highlight floor for me is sublevel 7. You have to dodge groinks, dweevils, and dirigibugs in this large treacherous floor. We are now at the top 5 for this ranking list, and the number 5 spot is the Cavern of Chaos. While it's not as memorable as the other two caves in the Wistful Wild, it still holds up as a great cave. It's one of the first caves to hit the double digits in the sublevel count and to feature no upgrades. The biggest issue with this cave is that it does have a hard time standing out. While I do greatly enjoy this cave, I do find myself forgetting about a lot of the floors. This doesn't mean the floors are bad however, and not all of them are forgettable. The highlight floor sublevel 8 is one of the most well-known sublevels in the game, featuring a truckload of dwarf bulborbs and 2 gatling groinks to top it off. The fight with the segmented crobster on sublevel 10 was also very close to being on my highlight sublevels. It's one of the most unique, challenging and fun fights in the series, and it's a shame Nintendo forgot about this guy. Alright, fourth on the list we have the Dream Den. This is the final cave in the game and obviously is the hardest cave in the game as well. This cave makes you deal with all the different layout strategies and enemies you had to learn throughout the game in this 14 sublevel endurance test. The highlight floor for me is sublevel 14, which features the iconic fight with the Titan Dweevil and is one of the few times yellow Pikmin are actually useful in this game. Another cool thing about this cave is you don't actually have to do it last. You can take it on at any time as long as you have the Wistful Wild unlocked, which I find very nice. This cave would have been ranked higher, but there are a few nasty sublevels that bog it down a bit. Most notably sublevel 4, which I dread every time I replay this game. Having to deal with 10 armoured cannon beetles in a really cramped space just makes me think, hey, maybe that Trephilis guy had a point. But thankfully most of the sublevels are great. Alright, third up we have the Frontier Cavern. This cave has a lovely snow aesthetic and the brick walls remind me of that one Windows screensaver. This one is always a blast to play through and every sublevel lands for me. The difficulty hits the sweet spot of being just difficult enough while not being too difficult to the point where I want to ram the GameCube controller up my hole of heroes. I'm gonna cheat here and put both sublevel 3 and 9 as my highlights. Sublevel 3 is one of the most memorable sublevels in the cave with a cool aesthetic and a maze-like layout with a bulbur killer that hunts you down, and sub-level 9 has the Empress Bulblax rematch, one of the most strangest boss fights in the series, and it actually makes you use the 2-captain system. The Submerged Castle. Yes, it's not at number 1, but it was pretty close. Do I even need to say anything about this cave? It's by far the most iconic cave in the Pikmin series, with its fun gimmick of the water wraith. If you spend over 5 minutes on a floor, Bubble Buddy here will start chasing you. This puts a large amount of pressure on you, along with the already huge amount of pressure you will already have from this cave's batshit hard difficulty. If there wasn't a water wraith in this cave, it would still probably be one of the hardest caves in the game. Sub-level 5 is definitely the highlight sub-level for me. The difficulty takes a screeching halt, and the final climactic showdown consists of one of the most feared creatures in all of Pikmin falling on his ass and running around like a dumbass. This guy chases you throughout the entire cave, and on the final fight, he runs out of fucking breath after 3 seconds. How does that even work? And finally, at number 1, we have the Hole of Heroes and my GameCube controller. This cave is my favourite part of Pikmin 2, and I always look forward to it while replaying the game. It's the longest cave in the game, clocking in at 15 sub-levels, and is a gigantic boss rush with a few non-boss sub-levels thrown in. Basically, every floor in this cave is fun and challenging, and I enjoy all of them. I don't know which one to pick for my highlight sub-level, as I enjoy a lot of them equally. While I do love the Dream Den, I will always think that this cave has the upper hand. And that basically concludes my ranking on the caves from Pikmin 2. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to head to the comment section and make your own ranking, and make sure to let me know if I should do one for Pikmin 4's caves. And be sure to subscribe or I'll send you to sub-level 4 of the Dream Den.